Welcome to Esoteric Thoughts. Today we have Ceelos joining us. I'm sure you all have seen Ceelos from his two discussions he done with Julian Brown. Hi, Ceelos.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
What's going on?
So from your two conversations you've had with Julian, I've had quite a few questions come back to me from viewers who want to know and understand a little bit more about Nile Valley and what it actually means. Right. So if we can just kick off with, why do you identify with Nile Valley rather than Kemet?
Well, the difference is, like, for instance, United States versus Washington, D.C. You know what I'm saying? So to say that the Nile Valley, and when you say Nile Valley, we call it a happy valley. It stretches all the way from Uganda, Lake Victoria, and stretches all the way into what they call the Delta, where you will find Kemet. You know what I'm saying? So the Nile Valley, it encompasses all that. It stretches, you know. And so Kemet was a marketplace that came later on. Nile Valley civilization, especially when you speak about the Ma Federation and becoming the Nile Valley, which was broken into the Saba, the seven kingdoms, broken into many other tribal kingdoms, genetic lineage of certain kingdoms that were broken up. But Kemet came later on because it's in the Delta and there's easy access for the Phoenicians and the Greeks to come in. So they were the one that termed that area as Kemet. You know, even though you could find Kemet in hieroglyphics, which is the sacred writings, but again, you know, the Greeks under the Ptolemy had the ability to also create certain hieroglyphics. So now, not all of those sacred writings in Kemet are actually original writings. But if you go down into the Nile Valley, areas like Uganda and even into South Africa, you actually find more original glyphs that are considered hieroglyphics. The beginning of hieroglyphics come from South Africa into Uganda and on and on and on. And it went so when it gets into Kemet, again, was a marketplace. A lot of Phoenicians, Greeks, you know, and that's what term Kemet is, which means, again, black. Kemet, Kemet, and also stem from Ham, Hamam. Hamam means black when you study the linguistics of it. But that was a description given to that particular area, which is in the Delta, what they call Kemet, which came later on. So what predates Kemet is, the Nile Valley, which is the Ma Federation, what they call the Fish Federation, and all of those tribes. Those tribes left behind institutions, temples, institutions, writings. They had oral traditions that started to, oral traditions that were kept by their storytellers, their priests, all through Sudan, again, Uganda, Sudan, where you find a lot of pyramids in Sudan. You find more pyramids in the Nile Valley, like Sudan, than you do in Kemet, in that area which is known as Kemet, you know, much more, you know. So it's like saying what Nile Valley is, it's like saying what Britain is to United States. You know what I'm saying? United States comes out of the British, you know what I'm saying, and the Revolutionary War. Same thing with Kemet and the Nile Valley, which is known as Kush. They also termed it as Kush. So the Nile Valley was also known as Ta-Seti. And before Ta-Seti, it was known as Hat-Ka, Ptah, or Hut Ba Pata or Hut Ka Bata. Those were the areas. Predates. Then, of course, through different interpretations and different other groups coming in, Indonesian groups and groups coming in, there, is that me? Oh, see that noise. Is that coming from me? Oh yeah, that's a guy doing yard work. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, so you find different names for the area of Nile Valley would be considered. Let me see if I can mute that. Okay. You can hear me? You can still hear me. Okay, so I just cut that noise off. I denoised it. So it was known as Taseti, land of the bow, the Ma Federation. They were hunter-gatherer. Also, it was known as Tamare, Ta-ma-re, which is Ta for earth, Ma, water, Re. So the Ma Federation is Ma Federation, is that federation called the Fish Federation, is the federation that comes out of the water. And like today we say Ma, because we come from the waters. When the water bag breaks, you know what I'm saying? So this is Nile Valley. That's Nile Valley. And
So,
Kemet is different. Yeah.
So in terms of the deities that you revere, are they similar to that of Kemet?
Yes, actually, some of the deities, if that's a proper word, yeah, deities, some came from the Nile Valley. Like for instance, Amun Ra, Amun came from the Nile Valley. You know what I'm saying? Tahoti, Nile Valley. Ra, you can find Ra from the Nile Valley. And there are many other deities that you can trace it back to the Nile Valley that was taken into Kemet. Yeah.
So were these deities real people, based on real people? What exactly are these deities?
Okay, good, great question. Yeah, how can I put it? These deities were a way because of the hieroglyphics, deities were forces of nature, right? They were forces of nature, right? But what happened is when, in society, if you revere a particular force of nature and the actual, and the name that's prescribed, the description that's, prescribed to that force of nature, you take on those names. So of course they were Ra, because if you had a actual person that was the originator or was the catalyst, the originator of your particular tribe, then that person will be considered that, the epitome of your civilization and will be given that name. So yeah, in terms of they were actually persons that took on the names of these forces of nature because they exhibit certain qualities. Like if a person had a quality to say in a tribal, if the person had a quality to be that person that transcends or over the chaos. Let's say he's a person that knows how to look beyond chaos, all the different drama and everything, and it's a person that got his head in order and is balanced. He would take on the name Heru. A balanced man, a woman balanced, take on the name Ma'a. We do that to this day. My name is Kepra. You see this? Kepra Shua Sep. I took on the name of Kepra. So many years from now, they will say there was, let's say they deify me, there was a person by the name of Kepra. You know what I'm saying? But in reality, it's just that quality was given to me by a priest because they saw that character personality in me. And so they named me. They named that. And so that's what happened in the Nile Valley. Yeah, certain forces of nature and certain, and then you got Assad, Tahuti, So some of them were, some of them, like Assad was a real person, right? And also Assad, and also it took on the name Assad, that person, because Assad represents ascension and unity. That's what it represents. So a person who shows the most person that shows that character personality is going to take on that attribute. And same thing with Tahuti. You know what I'm saying? Those forces of nature.
Or would it be correct to say that the deity was there first and then the person took on the name after, rather than there was a person?
I would say that the forces of nature were first, definitely, natural nature. And then that was deified by a person that took on that. So I would say the opposite. You know what I'm saying? That first there was the force of nature, the observance of that. And then when a person took on those character personality and exhibit those, exhibit that, then he was deified. It happens today. It happens today.
And how exactly do you revere or venerate or worship these deities?
Well, by observing nature and seeing, and again, seeing, a lot of it is oral tradition, and seeing those character personality and everything you see today. Like if I was to, and we don't worship, because to say worship, you know what I'm saying? We don't pray, you know what I'm saying? We acknowledge, revere, we acknowledge these forces of nature. So we don't pray to them, you know what I'm saying? We don't worship, none of that. We acknowledge the principles of that particular force. And then of course, there are iconography, ideograms. They are symbols that was used to sort of like protect these teachings that were actually oral traditions, and these priests, by looking at the glyphs, was able to interpret it, but a lot of it was kept secret. That's just called sacred writing, hieroglyphics, because you had a lot of invaders coming in, and you had to have rite of passage when you wanted to enter into one of these temples and study under these priests. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of it was guarded by what they call griots, would be the word be used, like they use it in West Africa. And usually your priests were musician, your priest was a warrior, your priest was a storyteller, was an orator, a lot of the priests. So a lot of they had to be guarded through time. So because you had other invaders coming in, they had to guard those secrets. So they put them in ideograms. Like today, a lot of secrets are kept in anagrams. You know what I'm saying? They kept in anagrams.
So speaking of the sacred texts, books like the Book of the Dead, Celestial Cow, are these books that you make reference to?
Yes.
So can you just give us a quick, a very high level introduction into what exactly is the Book of the Dead?
The Book of Dead has been translated to the Book of Dead, which is a misnomer. It's actually the Book of Coming Forth by Day, the book of Coming Forth. Because the Book of Day describes what we call Ani. It's found in the funeral text, right? In the walls of Ani. And it describes the ascension of Assad. So that's the ascension. It was, without going too deeply into it, because I don't want to reveal certain things, rites of passage. But when you look at that, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, the Book of Coming Forth, you see a narrative, a description of what they call today messiahship or ascension, Assad ascending. The book of Celestial Cow, right? In that book, you have a conflict of man and the deities, or man and Ra, solar people, who were deified, solar culture, so people that dealt with solar technology, solar people, and you had this conflict that also is found in Isaiah. When you go into Isaiah, I think it's 59:1. There was a conflict between God and the people, Israelites. The conflict, same thing. In the book of Celestial Cow speaks about the conflict between the people and Ra, and then they introduce Atar in that book. So you see the comparison. When you look at the book of Coming Forth Today, then you look at Revelations, because that's revealed, Ascension. When you look at Celestial Cow, you're looking at the Old Testament, and you can see a comparison, a very much comparison, which predates stories that predate. Like, for instance, I think I'm not going to say what it is, but the conflict between two brothers would have been set in a Assad. There was a conflict, right? That you could find in Cain and Abel in the Bible. So a lot of these stories, these narratives, you find them predated in these stories that were stories that came from the Nile Valley and made their way into Kemet. And they used it in their funeral texts. The kings use it. So what they have now is a lot of the kings' narratives of what these stories are.
So how much influence did these books have on the actual Bible itself?
Oh, not only the book of Celestial Cow, not only the book of Coming Forth Today, which is the Book of the Dead, but what influenced the Bible primarily will be the Sumerian tablets, like the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Book of Etana. I mean, you have so many tablets, what they call the holy tablets. You have so many of these tablets that predates, that is in conjunction with the stories that are told in the Nile Valley, Sumeria. Because remember, I spoke about the Ma Federation. They traveled into Sumeria. They became the Ma-Gari, Ma-Gari in Sumeria. They even began into India. So these stories went into Sumeria and became what you call your Enuma Elish, your Book of Etana, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, there's so much tablet. And if you go into those tablets, you see a great similarity between the biblical text and those. And then you can also, because Nile Valley predates Sumer. It predates Mesopotamia. There's actual facts, glyphs, and archaeological findings that predates. So these stories, hunter-gatherers, they travel and they took their stories with them. And so you find that very, very much. Yeah.
So in the Nile Valley, what is the concept of the devil or evil?
Well, from a natural science perspective, when you look at the word evil and you flip it, you get the word live. It's the other side of the coin. Anything that stops you from living and growing will be considered evil. That's Nile Valley. Anything. And it's not that they had a concept of evil, is they knew the concept of chaos and separation. Chaos. They were beings that didn't want the unified federation, so they wanted to break up the federation, and they wanted, it's just another side of the coin. So when you look at Nile Valley, it's just the other side of the coin. That's what they say. That's why we always say that in order for you to have a God, in order for you to have a devil, you got to have a God. And God can do his work if there's no devil. You know what I'm saying? Because then why would God have to do any work and fight? That's the flip side of the coin. It's the same coin, but the flip side. And so that's the concept. Evil and live is just a flip side. And like if you go into Tai Chi and you go into evil, the devil and God can exist at the same time. They exist in the same book called the Bible. And also evil and good can exist at the same time, different vibration. That's the whole yin yang. You know what I'm saying? That's also taught in the Nile Valley, because your heaven could be my hell. You know what I'm saying? My heaven could be your hell. We see that played. So that's Nile Valley science teaches that it's just flip side of the coin. And it's just two different vibrations, negation and position yourself. That's positive and negative. Yeah.
So how is it possible to follow an ancient spiritual belief system in this modern age?
Because natural nature is consistent. Ancient values, our ancestors were so observant because they had to be observant of natural nature. They were experimenting. That's the beginning. They were experimenting. They was living their life. You know what I'm saying? So in today's time, we got natural nature, even though some conditions are interjected into our society through man's, different devices. The fourth industrial revolution, the industrial revolution is interjected, but still natural nature is at the core of it. You're still experiencing nature around you. So Nile Valley science teaches you to be knowledgeable, to be a reason out natural nature. And that today, it's much more needed, because that's,
I think there's a bit of a misconception about ancestor veneration.
Mm-hmm.
Can you at least explain to us exactly what ancestor veneration is?
Well, have you ever done your DNA and finding out your ancestors and your DNA, your lineage? That's veneration, ancestor veneration. It's just having that. Right now we use science to do that, but back in the day it was oral traditions. So you venerate your ancestors, very important, because you have, that's the line of succession. In other words, if I was to look at you and you say, who do you look like, your mother or your father? I look like my mother. Okay, well, your mother, who did she look like? Her mother and her father. And then a lot of times your moms might say, man, you act just like you're my father. Or you look like him. That's ancestry. That's knowing, that's ancestry, that's character, personality. That's ancestor veneration. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we call upon the ancestors. We ring a bell. You know what I'm saying? For the ancestors. Because, and then if we focus and says, man, this is genetic blueprint. This is an ancestral pattern that is the earth magnetic field that we have to acknowledge. You have to acknowledge. And we have to be careful when we do acknowledge something like that, because it can cause separatism. So you don't want to cause separatism. You want to ground yourself by knowing your ancestors, knowing who you are. That's how you seed and you ground yourself. And that's how you can see that in your children. Oh, you act like my mom, so you act like my pops. You know what I'm saying? You see that play. That's ancestral veneration. So we in the Nile Valley, if my ancestors, I can go back, but then in the spiritual, esoteric, and metaphysical sense, we'll say kepra, because of the way I act, my character, personality. So precedes that. And so that's ancestral veneration, to revere something, to have respect for that.
What do you think of this comment?
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument that man's understanding of God evolved. Thus, ancient religions are primitive and lack an understanding of God.
Well, God, in lack of a better term, if you look at God as nature, how's it changed? How has nature changed? I mean, change is a constant thing in the universe. That is the law. Change, but things evolve. In other words, in Nile Valley science is taught in nature science. like the seasons. And you look at the way the fetus is born, you look at the way stars are born, they go through seasons, like they call the 4 seasons, right? That we know of. They go through a origination process, what they call the origination stage. Then you go to a de-origination stage. Then you go through an evolutionary stage. Then you go to a revolution. That means to revolve back into your original stage. So this is a constant wheel. It's a change, but at the same time, it's staying true to its core of what, you know, of reality. That even though things change, you know, and technology, but still that technology that is used today is still a technology that was used back then. Look at solar technology. Ancient Nile Valley used solar technology. They were able to use the sun, right, to heat up their houses, the sun, and they use water to cool it all. You know what I'm saying? These is technology that still exists today. You look at air conditioning, there's water going through it. You know what I'm saying? You know, and you look at the heating, you know, the solar technology. All of this is the same. So yeah, there is a change, but at the same time, the change for the better, the change is not so dramatic as people would think. So when you talk about God, if you're saying God is nature and the creator of nature, then why would God have to change when it's God? One thing that God cannot do is be less than himself, right? Using that term. If you're going to say God is so omnipotent and so omniscient and so powerful, one thing he cannot do is be less than himself. You know what I'm saying? So why would we want to do that? You know, so in today's day, modern time, you know, our ancestors already figured it out for us. They already figured it out. It's just that we, you know, we've been conditioned to think we separate ourselves, to think that we're separate from nature. That's an illusion. That's an illusion, to think that we're separate from nature, you know? So we eluded ourselves through this certain illusion. That's what happened. But in reality, it's the all. The all within the all is nature. So, I mean, our ancestors and ancient people already figured this out a long time ago. And genetically, it's in us. That knowledge genetically is embedded in us. So that's why we have DNA explosion, you know? But yeah, hope I answered that.
You did. What advice do you give to anybody who's trying to understand more about African spirituality? One of the questions I always get is, you know, what books do they read? Where do they start to look? Can they practice by themselves? Do they need to be part of a temple or a group?
Well, that's a difficult question because it all depends on you as a person. Some people need mentors. Some people need to read books. And it's important to read books as to confirm certain things, you know, validation. I personally, I had the experience of reading many books. One of them that I read that had an impact in my life was The Nature of Nature, Volume 1 and Volume 2. But there's discussion about that. You know, it's not about the writer. So you can read any book. It's not about the writer or the writer's family life or the writer's way they live their life. It's what they say. Does what they say, does that adds up? Does it fit perfectly the puzzle of truth? You know what I'm saying? Is what they say, you know? So I don't care. It could have been Jesse James, or it could have been Hitler. I don't care who said it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to see what did they say, and does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? So in dealing with Nile Valley and studying Nile Valley, for one, you see, you can extract Nile Valley science from the Bible, believe it or not. because when something comes out of something, all you have to do is know how to go to the core of it and extract those sciences. But you have to be, again, knowledgeable about, what to look for, you know what I'm saying? So there are rites of passage, Freemasonry, certain Mason schools teaches that, certain Sufi orders. So there's certain schools of thoughts, so I'm not telling anybody to join any organization, anything like that. But the most important thing is investigation. You have to be willing to do the work and to investigate, look for that omitted data, look for that altered sequence in time, look for those things and be honorable, be honest about it, be truthful about it. And then you'll find yourself, conducting your mind, putting back in order, sequence of things. And that will open up the doors for you for Nile Valley, for natural science, Nile Valley natural science. That would open up the door. And next thing you know, whatever you read the Bible, you read the Quran, you read the Verdict, anything you read, you're going to extract natural science from it. Anything you see, you're going to extract natural science. Anything you start reasoning out, definitely you're going to extract natural science. That's the only advice I can give anybody, is that, that's the core of it, But again, there are books. I like to read Afronauts. Very good. Nature of Nature, Actual Facts, and a lot of books that for instance, the Sabaeans read and the Wapians read. Those books are like, I look at them as references, because I had the upbringing to be mentored by the writer of those books, the Actual Facts and the Pataruk, the pathway, the way, in those old books. And I study under the university, Ansarullah University, which was chartered by the Ansarullah in Sudan. I've met the Prime Minister of Sudan, Saeed Sadiq, and he sent money. We were an embassy in the States, in Brooklyn. We were an embassy. We were a university. So we were getting a lot of information from the Sufi orders that goes way back, oral traditions. So that's another way. So yeah, if you could find elders, mentor, anybody can get at me. You know what I'm saying? You contact SO and give you my email, and you can get at me and on my podcast. I constantly and let me tell you something. I'm also learning. I don't know everything. I'm learning. This is a study that never ends. You're going to always keep learning and learning and learning and learning, so, yeah.
Ceelos, thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome, my brother.